This isn't the same war anymore. The rules just changed, and not everyone will survive the new game. This is News List. What you're about to witness isn't another frontline update. This is the moment conventional warfare evolved into something we don't have a name for yet, where the battlefield is everywhere, where civilians become combatants by proximity, where technology determines who freezes in the dark. Subscribe, because understanding this shift might be the most important thing you do today. You thought war was trenches? Front lines? Battle reports measuring advances in kilometers? Forget it. In the last few days, the conflict entered a phase neither headquarters nor societies prepared for. Ukrainian Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky made an announcement that landed like artillery. Russia now produces up to 1,000 strike drones daily, not 1,000 per month. Not ramping up to that capacity. Now. Already. At a tempo that transforms the sky into a conveyor belt of threats. This isn't just a number. It's a signal. Moscow no longer plays resource conservation games. Strikes become serial, systemic, exhausting. And the targets? Not just the front. In recent periods alone, hundreds of drones and missiles launched across Ukraine. Primary focus: energy infrastructure, substations, distribution nodes, transmission lines, all during freezing temperatures. Strikes aren't calculated for immediate effect. They're designed for chaos accumulation. Kyiv's reaction tells the story. Emergency state declared in energy sector. Cities plunge into darkness. Blackouts lasting hours, sometimes days. This is no longer military episode. This is pressure on state sustainability itself. And here it becomes clear. This isn't conventional frontline anymore. This is new warfare form that shatters previous understanding of where battle line exists and who's actually under fire. But the systematic nature of these attacks reveals something even more calculated. While the world discusses sanctions and diplomatic statements, southern and eastern Ukraine experiences entirely different reality. Russia transitions from classic strikes to systematic attack on critical infrastructure. This isn't simply hitting targets. This is deliberate exhaustion of national resilience in winter's depth, when every degree of frost affects millions. Kyiv and suburban cities experience consequences firsthand. Up to 500 buildings without heat. Hundreds of thousands facing electrical blackouts. Water supply and heating become hostages of cold strategy. Under these conditions, ordinary frontline defense transforms into struggle for civilian survival. Panic gradually encompasses not only population, but headquarters forced to react instantly, redirecting resources where threat already materialized. Western officials from NATO to Brussels don't hide concern condemning escalation. Every energy strike challenges international norms, official voices declare. But despite loud words, assistance arrives delayed. Infrastructure protection effectiveness remains limited. And here's the key moment. Ukraine no longer limits itself to passive defense. In response to strikes, it deploys its own counterstrikes, including new tactical schemes changing familiar combat rules. Russia calculated on paralysis effect. But now on the front line, new balance forms. Tension grows, stakes rise. Conflict transforms into game at limits of both sides' capabilities. And precisely in this technology race and frozen nights, determination occurs. Who sets the tone on battlefield? But Ukraine's response strategy reveals its own dangerous evolution. While Kyiv and Washington discuss sanctions and diplomatic plans, on battlefield Ukraine emerges at new strike strategy level. Ukrainian armed forces' deep strikes become regular. Dozens of targets on adversary territory struck in single day. Ammunition depots to communication facilities. This isn't merely shelling. This demonstrates technical precision and strategic range, changing frontline's familiar rhythm. Russia reacts instantly, ramping up production of Shahed strike drones, each capable of hitting critical targets with high accuracy. Strategy straightforward, compensate losses with quantity, while simultaneously developing new defensive tactics. On frontline, active drone interception attempts, electronic suppression means deployment, adaptive air defense systems. Every engagement transforms into mini-combat test of innovations. In this race, technology becomes key factor. Production and application speed. Russia bets on mass pressure. Ukraine on precision and strategic effect. Each side attempts outpacing opponent by fractions of seconds, because instantaneous reaction now determines strike outcomes. Tactical evolution makes frontline not a line, but zone of constant pressure, where each morning brings new strikes and new destruction. Force balance ceased measuring solely by trench kilometers. Now speed, technology, and adaptation capability under instantaneous threats determine outcomes. But the human cost of this technological arms race tells a darker story. In recent weeks, Ukrainian side experiences increasingly tense situation. Ukrainian drone losses begin reaching catastrophic scale. Russian side reports 15 Ukrainian drones destroyed in single attack, questioning current strategy effectiveness. Simultaneously, reports from Ukrainian commanders openly declaring serious air defense problems, insufficient modern systems for repelling attacks, ammunition deficit for maintaining defensive intensity. All this creates internal pressure on Ukrainian general staff, where calls intensify for strategy revision. Expectations that Ukrainian armed forces could reverse war through aerial strikes or remote operations encounter reality of limited resources. Air defense can't keep pace with attacking drone quantities. Accumulating new strike means requires time possibly no longer available. Additionally, increasingly frequent emotional testimonies of exhaustion from ordinary soldiers and civilians. Constant bombardments. Frequent destruction. Humanitarian crisis. All contributes to psychological fatigue growth. Military and civilians begin questioning, how much longer can this be endured? If situation thus, frontline isn't merely attrition warfare. This is attempt to withstand strike-changing war's very character, where every mistake becomes fatal. And facing this mounting pressure, Russia adapts its approach in ways that make the conflict even more unpredictable. After Ukraine intensified strikes and Western weapons deliveries continue, Russia was forced to adapt tactics. Mass assaults previously occupying primary strategic place begin receding to secondary role. Instead, Kremlin increasingly employs small units oriented on pinpoint defense breakthroughs with subsequent fire correction. One critical element of new strategy: integration of automated systems and drones. Recent weeks, Russia significantly intensified production and use of kamikaze drones and electronic warfare systems, blocking enemy communications and disrupting reconnaissance means. Additionally, Moscow actively implements smart fire systems, enabling strikes on mobile targets with several meter precision. These systems' effectiveness begins bringing gradual frontline successes. Russia achieves tactical initiative in several areas, shifting focus to strategic adversary exhaustion. Equally important, breakthroughs when small troop groups effectively overcome front lines, establishing supply corridors, bypassing fortified areas, creating confusion in Ukrainian armed forces ranks. This becomes an important tool in struggle for initiative and time. This is no longer mere response. This is new strategy that, if effectiveness confirms, could reverse war course and change its character toward more prolonged and destructive nature. Against backdrop of accelerated modernization and new tactics, combat action zones expand across entire territory. But the most terrifying aspect isn't tactical, it's where the battlefield now exists. If previously strikes concentrated on frontline, now targeted operations in deep rear areas where infrastructure, warehouses, communications become targets. Russia employs strike drones and long-range missile systems, enabling strikes dozens of kilometers beyond Ukrainian armed forces' defense lines. Ukraine attempts applying its deep strikes, but encounters high equipment losses and resource limitations. Each week, frontline ceases being stable line. It stretches and deepens, affecting both military and civilian objects. On energy front, catastrophic situation. Strikes hit power stations, transmission lines, gas networks. Millions remain without heat and light at temperatures reaching -15 Celsius. Water supply systems collapse. Heating systems fail. Civilians face panic, evacuation, resource shortages, intensifying social pressure on authorities and military command. Experts indicate such actions change war's very character, transforming it from localized frontline struggle into universal crisis for entire nation. Now every map point becomes potential battlefield. Population becomes conflict's indirect participants. This is no longer frontline duel. This is warfare across territorial depth, where every decision, every strike can alter events' course and millions' fate. Question only: who manages maintaining initiative under these conditions? And what is each player willing to do on this dangerous chessboard? But we've reached the point where these tactical considerations pale against the larger implications. We've reached critical point. Russia continues intensifying strikes, applying new technologies and tactics, causing serious Ukrainian armed forces problems. Air defense issues, ammunition shortages, logistics chain disruptions becoming systemic. Under constantly growing equipment and personnel losses, Ukrainian army faces dangerous ranks, instability. Conflict already exceeds ordinary attrition warfare boundaries. Technical and humanitarian crisis intensifies daily. Energy sector situation, water supply, transport systems increasingly resemble military siege rather than mere army confrontation. Against this backdrop, civilians suffer not only from combat operations, but from constant infrastructure attacks, making each day in Ukraine increasingly unbearable. Now question arises: can Ukraine maintain its defense, or is new escalation inevitable? Actions directed at destroying vital infrastructure could lead to violence's new spiral, involving not only Russia and Ukraine, but other global players. New nations' inclusion in conflict means destruction scale could grow geometrically. War changes before our eyes. And not for better. Risks of escalation into full-scale conflict of new type become increasingly real. 1,000 drones per day, not a target, not an ambition. Current production capacity. But numbers don't capture what's really happening here. We're witnessing warfare's evolution in real time. The dissolution of boundaries between military and civilian, between frontline and homeland, between combatant and survivor. When targeting energy grids becomes strategy, when freezing civilians becomes tactic, when humanitarian crisis becomes weapon. This isn't escalation. This is transformation. The drone swarms, the precision strikes, the electronic warfare, the adaptive defenses, each innovation met with counter-innovation, each capability matched with counter-capability. And the tempo? Accelerating beyond human decision-making capacity. While generals plan responses to today's tactics, tomorrow's systems already deploy. But here's what keeps military theorists awake. If neither side can win decisively, but both can inflict unlimited damage, where does it end? Millions in darkness. Temperatures plunging. Systems collapsing. Resilience tested not by combat outcomes, but by winner's brutality. And every day this continues, the threshold for what's acceptable in warfare shifts. Today, power grids. Tomorrow, what? Water systems? Food supply? Communications entirely? Because once you cross certain lines, they don't exist anymore. They become normal, expected. Tactical. 1,000 drones per day represents more than production capacity. It represents the industrialization of destruction, the automation of war, the transformation of conflict from human struggle into systems competition. And when warfare becomes about which system exhausts which population first, have we already lost something we can never recover? So here's what I need you to think about. Are we prepared for conflict that's no longer about armies, but about infrastructure resilience? Where victory isn't battlefield control, but population endurance? Where technology doesn't support soldiers, it replaces strategic thinking entirely, because that's not future warfare. That's the war happening right now, tonight, as millions sit in the dark at minus 15 degrees. Drop your thoughts below. This isn't academic. This is the template being written for every future conflict. New subscribers, you're witnessing history's inflection point. Longtime viewers, your continued engagement matters more than ever. This is Newslist. Stay warm, stay informed, stay human. See you in the next analysis.